Well, hello, Author Nation. Thanks for tuning in to another State of the Nation podcast. We got a good one for you today. We got Damon Courtney from BookFunnel joining Joe Solari talking about binging, direct sales, and a whole bunch of other stuff you're not going to want to miss. So stay tuned.
Hey, everybody, it's Joe Solari from Author Nation, and today's guest is Damon Courtney from BookFunnel.
Hey, how you doing, everybody? How are you doing out there, Author Nation?
Well, I'm kind of tired. Maybe we should just go have a nap after all the conversations we've had off recording.
We've already been talking for an hour, and now we're gonna jump on and we're gonna record. Like this is a totally off the cuff thing that we were like, oh, really? Talk about that? That sounds good.
Besides being the best beard in the industry, you're also a pretty integral part of how authors can serve up books and audio to their customers. Why don't we, before we kind of talk about what we're going to talk about, because it's going to be very different than most BookFunnel conversations. Why don't you just give a quick, for the two people that don't know who you are and what BookFunnel is, the intro?
Yeah. So BookFunnel started off really as just like the problem was, we're all delivering, authors are out there trying to deliver ebooks, and we're selling our books on wherever you want to sell them, right? If you're exclusive to Amazon or you're wide and you're selling on all the retailers, those retailers are taking care of the delivery of those books, right? You buy a book from Barnes and Noble, it's just going to show up on your Nook, right? They're all really good at that. The problem was that, if you wanted to do more, and the beauty of being indie is that indie authors are always looking for other creative and clever ways to reach their audiences and to create relationships with those audiences. And so, oh, you've got this cool short story that you want to give away. Kevin J. Anderson is an author who's out there, and he writes in the Dune world and Star Wars, and he does all this stuff. But every Christmas, we're on his Christmas card list, and every Christmas he sends out a free short story with a BookFunnel link. That
Cool.
he's like, it's just a cute idea, right? He puts a little card in there and it says, hey, you're on my Christmas list, and it's a nice little card that he and his wife send out. And then it's also got a little card in there that has a BookFunnel download link that has a link to a free novella or something that he's written that he just wants to give away. That is not something that you can do on Amazon. You can't just jump on Amazon, paste a list of email addresses and say, send everybody a copy of my book. Like, in fact, nobody, I say beat up on Amazon, but really nobody does that. You can't do that on anything. That was what I wanted to do. And so originally BookFunnel was just like, hey, we'll just kind of, we'll handle when they have trouble getting the ebook onto their Kindle, we'll help them do that. We'll support them in that. And then we just continued to add features as authors would come to us over the years and say, hey, we'd really love to be able to send out advanced reader copies, but we needed to do this. So we went off and built that. And, hey, we'd love to do direct sales and deliver all of our, and let BookFunnel do all the delivery of our direct sales. So we went off and built that. And it's like each thing just grew what BookFunnel could do. And ultimately now, like, we have so many tools available. We added audiobooks a few years ago. And so like now as an indie author, you really can, with a BookFunnel account, just kind of do whatever you think of, right? If you want to spend, Kevin, and as another word, like if it's your birthday, he'll just send you a book on your birthday. He'll gift you a copy. We have a feature on BookFunnel called Gift a Book, where you just plug in their email address and say, hey, I just wanted to send you a happy birthday. Here's your book, right? Here's a free copy of my new novel or the first book in my series, whatever, right? The beauty is that what I try to think of is whatever you can want to do, we want to be the tool that's going to let you do that, so that when indies come up with these brilliant ideas of all these crazy, cool marketing campaigns and all the shit that you want to do, sure, just go do it.
Awesome. Awesome. And what's interesting is what we're going to be talking about is this is kind of an emergent property of what you built, is the idea that, first off, with Author Nation, we're really trying to explore how the industry's changed, right? And one of the things that I was thinking about is, authors are really struggling with where they're going to find audience and how they find audience. And then I was thinking, I'm mulling around in my head the process of how do you take a decentralized audience, whether they're little niche audiences in the long tail of a bigger audience or fragmented across different platforms. How do you bring the decentralized audience into a centralized place where you can build your experience? And from that, I was like, oh my God, BookFunnel may be one of the biggest decentralized reading and listening audiences on the planet now. So I wanted to explore that with you in a couple different ways, like how much you can tell us about that audience and how you can maybe help authors understand two things. One, how you're servicing that audience. You've always been spectacular in your customer service to readers, and how they could maybe kind of learn from you how to do that, do some things with their audience that comes from your experience.
Well, yeah, so the funny thing is like BookFunnel has no, you talk about decentralized, we have no location where readers can just come to like bookfunnel.com and find a bunch of books, right? That's not a thing that we set out to build. What we tried to build was authors doing their own things, whether that was doing your mailing list signups or sending out your advanced reader copies or doing your direct sales and building out your own store. And I've always said that we're not in the business of building BookFunnel's brand. We're in the business of building your brand. So I see BookFunnel as just like, hey, we're just here to help you deliver the thing that you've sold. But it's still going to be your website. It's still going to be the readers are going to your place, right? But you're right that we have a lot of data, right? So if readers come into they end up ultimately in our platform because they're reading their books, they're downloading to their Kindle, they're listening to audiobooks, whatever it is that they're doing, that part they're coming to us for. And a lot of readers really do just like, oh, I get my books and I use my BookFunnel app and I send it over to my Kindle and I'm done, right? And so we don't have a ton of interaction with those readers. But more and more as time has gone on, we have readers that enjoy reading in the BookFunnel app or listening to their audiobooks in our app. And so there's more data that's available in those cases. Famously, if you go, there's a page on Amazon you can go to and you can request all of the data that they have on you. And you can just say, hey, I want to know, this is all because of the European Union and the GDPR laws. I want to know everything that you know about me. And it turns out that Amazon knows a lot about you, a lot of scary things about you.
Oh yeah.
Like if you use a Kindle device or a Kindle app, they know how long you were on every single page, how everywhere you clicked or tapped anywhere on those pages. Like, an enormous amount of data. We are not that. Like we don't collect that amount of data. But there is data that we have. We give you a lot of it, right? So if you go into your sales, if you're doing direct sales and BookFunnel is doing the delivery, however you're doing that, Shopify, PayPal, WooCommerce, Thrivecart, like whatever, right? However you're doing that, you can actually go into your transactions and look at a reader and it says, okay, here's where they bought that book. And if you look at the details on that book, it'll not only tell you when they bought that book, but the data is actually in there that says whether they have downloaded the book, right? Have they downloaded it? And if they have, when, the actual date and timestamp of when they started, when they downloaded that book. Now, what I'd love to do is take that data and make it easier to get to on a larger basis, so that if you go in and you look at your store, you're not just seeing each person individually, because you can do that right now. If you go into BookFunnel, you can literally click on each transaction and go, this person bought it on June 1st and they downloaded it the same day. They downloaded it within 30 minutes of purchase, right? Which is great. That's the kind of data that you want to know. I would love to take and be able to aggregate that data together so that when you go into your store, what you're really looking at is like, okay, the average reader who buys from your store downloads and starts reading the book within 4 hours or within 4 days or whatever that is, right? The funny thing is that while we have that data, I don't actually know what those numbers are, right? But I think that authors could do a lot with that data. If people are getting your first book and jumping on it really quickly, like within 10 minutes of purchase. Now I know these are out there because we get emails, right? Our support people answer hundreds of emails a day from readers. And we get emails from people who just completed their purchase 3 minutes ago, and they're already asking, they've immediately emailed us and goes, where's my books? So those are people.
See a lot of those.
Yeah, and those are people that are right on it, right? Like there are plenty of times in my own purchasing when I will go to like Kobo and I'll buy a book because I don't want to forget that I want to read that book, but I'm actually in the middle of a series right now and I'm not ready to read that book. So if you were to look at my data, it might show that I purchased that book and then I sat on it for 3 weeks before I finally picked it up and started reading it. That's not because I wasn't interested in the book. I just happened to be I happened to be into something else right at that particular moment. But there are a ton of readers out there who immediately jump on the books. Now, to me, what that says, if I'm looking at my data and I'm looking at that download data, and most of the readers that are picking up that first book are jumping on it, like downloading it and start reading it in the same day, I'm doing a pretty good job, right? My sales pages they're not just converting into sales, they're converting into excitement. People
Yeah.
not only
Amen.
want to buy that book for 99 cents or 4.99 or whatever great deal that you've got, but they not only bought it, they immediately downloaded it and started reading it. That tells me that I'm doing my job. And if instead I'm looking at that data and I'm going, well, the average time to somebody buying book one and then the first time they open it is like 7 days, and that's the average, well, then I might be making sales, but people aren't like super excited to jump on the book and start reading it. And then
Right.
the other piece of data that you could have if they, so, like BookFunnel does when we started, everything was all about delivering to everybody else's devices and readers. And that's still a lot of what we do because that's what BookFunnel was built on. People buy your book, they use the BookFunnel app or they use our process to send it to their Kindle and then they go read it on their Kindle. And that's great. Like we have no plans to stop any of that. That's how people want to read. But we released our app 4 years ago or so, and readers can now just read directly in the BookFunnel app, or they can listen to audiobooks right there in the app. They don't have to send it to another device. They don't have to send it to another app. And as smartphones have gotten more prevalent, more and more now, I mean, practically everybody's got one. More and more people read on their smartphones or read directly in the BookFunnel app. Well, now there's something a little different because, like Amazon, I have more data about what readers' habits are when they're inside my app. And
Mm.
so I can't tell you once somebody downloads and sends to Kindle, all I can tell you is when they downloaded it. I can't tell you anything further because I don't have any of that data. But if they're reading in our app, well, then you can start to get aggregate data like 50% of the people that opened the book finished the book. And that's really good data to have because if that number is really low, and it's like 5% of the people that opened the book finished the book, you have a problem. You have a
Yeah.
problem
Yeah.
with your book.
And
And
now
it's
you can,
better.
now it's, yeah, like something needs to be fixed. And especially if you kind of know where.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing. It's like, oh, of the 5% of the 95% that didn't finish the book, 80% of them stopped somewhere between 20 and 25%. Okay. That's your problem. There's your
Mm.
problem right there. I don't have it down to the line where your problem is,
Where
but
they
your
threw their Kindle.
yeah, exactly. But your problem is somewhere in there. And so like because this is all about the data and the machinery, right?
Yeah.
You can hone your Facebook ads and you can get them working really, really well. And then you get your Facebook ads and they're working great. And we know that they're going to the store or the landing page and we know that they're converting. So they're buying the books, except that, in today's modern world, it is really unlikely unless what you're selling them is like a big bundle or something where you're immediately profitable. The chances are good that you're going to run a Facebook ad, you're going to get people to click through, you're going to get your cost per click down to whatever, but in the end, you're going to spend a few dollars probably for every sale that you make. Now that's fine if the person buys book one and then ultimately ends up buying the rest of your series. But if you're getting people, if you perfect all of the Facebook ads, and this is what I see people doing, you've perfected all the ads, you've done everything right, you made the sale. But if the people aren't reading the book all the way to the end and then going on and buying the rest of the books, you're probably ultimately still losing money on that reader. So what you need to know is how many, at least on the aggregate, how many people that purchase actually end up finishing the book. And then you have the data about whether or not they went on to buy more books, right? That's the
Yeah.
beauty.
Yeah.
The biggest benefit of direct sales, and it's not all about like violating people's privacies. What it really is I know who's buying my books. I know the email address of the person who's buying my books, so I can see that Joe Solari purchased book one and then 3 days later purchased book two, and then a day after that purchased the next 6 books in the series. Now I know not only is Joe reading my books, he's a fan, right?
Yeah.
Nobody comes back to your store and buys 6 more books if they're just sort of meh about the book.
Yeah. What's so interesting about this is, this is similar to what Netflix started to do with their data, right? They change things with the mechanics of the platform. Like, oh, we're just going to roll you into the next episode to keep things binging, right?
Right.
And then the next thing they did is they looked at the data of what people watched and started to tell show writers, here's what you need to be doing. This is when we see people binge through a show, and here's when we see people die in the first episode, right? So unfortunately or fortunately, this data helps people to really hook into those, those psychological needs that we have and what gets us like chomping at the bit for a show. The funniest thing, we're Susan and I are watching a show now, and it's one of these where now they're doing it only once a week.
Yep.
Like back when you and I were kids, like you have to go Tuesday at 8, watch. It's like, you're killing me. I gotta wait.
But this is one of those things where like Netflix, so some of these shows, so Netflix, of course, is the binging platform, right? So they release almost invariably, they release the whole season at once. And that's still, they have a few shows where they've done it episode by episode. But here's the thing where you can't always, and this is something we've been running BookFunnel now, my wife and I, for 9 years, I'm like almost a decade. And you can't always give the people what they want, because sometimes you have to give them what they need. And we can go into the Rolling Stones. But the point is that, like, if you ask me, right, I'll give you a great example. If you ask me what I want to binge. I want all the episodes. I want to know that I can watch them all at whatever pace that I want to watch them. And it's probably going to be like 3-4 episodes a night until the whole season is done. But a few years ago, Julie and I started watching Only Murders in the Building, which if you haven't seen, it's on Hulu, and it's a fantastic. If you like Martin Short and Steve Martin and comedy, it's really, really well done. And Hulu does their episodes, weekly episodes, right? They'll drop the first 2 or 3 episodes of a season on day 1, but then everything else comes out a week after.
Yeah.
Now that drives me absolutely crazy, especially in a show like Only Murders, which is a mystery, right? So at the very beginning of the show, a murder has happened and we're trying to find the killer, right? It's a classic mystery thing, and it's really funny. And yet, if you ask me what I want is for you to just drop all the episodes so I can watch them all at once. But what we found was that over the seasons, as they were being released week by week, we would talk about it all week. Who do you think's doing it? Do you think it's him? No, it can't be him. Now, remember, he was at the diner, so it can't be him. What about her? No, it can't be her. But, well, maybe it could be her, because remember, she said that. And we had so much fun. We had more fun watching that than any show we had watched in years. And so, it's, if you ask readers, if you actually went to like Facebook and you polled your readers and says, hey, do you guys like cliffhangers? The answer would be, hell no, don't ever give me a cliffhanger. And yet the books with cliffhangers, immediately the pre-orders shoot through the roof, because of course, we don't like it. And yet there's a part of our psyche that goes, I have to do it. Right.
Yep. Oh,
so
yeah.
They don't always want to do what readers are saying that they want. You're the writer. What do they need from you as the writer?
No, I 100% hear you. And I think that the cool thing about what we've been talking about with, if you have that data and you're starting to look at that stuff, is you start to change your experience. So we were talking before we hopped on here, like if I knew how long it took for people to get to a certain point, that information would make me better at communicating to them. I wouldn't communicate on my time frame. I would communicate on their time frame, right? I would say, oh, it takes them 6 weeks to get to halfway through that first book. Maybe that's the first time I should be talking to them about the next book, right? Rather than how most of our marketing is so transactionally based. It's like, did you download the book? Hi, I'm an author. So I like to sell books. Here's the next book I want to sell you. I never stop and ask you like, hey, how do I get to the top of your to be read pile? What are you reading right now? Like the things that as a reader are dear to us, right? Like I might write you a full page email back telling you about the book I'm reading right now. That's engagement.
Right.
Right. Can you touch on the like you've how long's the app been out, and how have you seen like the application growth and use over that period of time? If you want to get specific on numbers, that would be awesome, but I'll leave that to you.
So when we launched it, so we've always had an Android app because that on Android, that's what we needed to be able to deliver books. So I built that really early on, but it really was like an app in the loosest sense of the word. It was basically just like, oh, we downloaded your book, we've put it in this folder, and now you can go send it to your Kindle or whatever, right? So it was 4 or 5 years ago that we launched what is today the BookFunnel app. If you go to the iOS App Store, you go to the Google Play Store, you download the BookFunnel app, you get our app. And really we started building it because we wanted to do audiobooks. And we figured out pretty quickly that in the ebook world, like what we call side loading, and if you don't know that term, it basically just means like taking an EPUB or an ebook and putting it into a device that where you didn't buy it from their store, right? So if you have a Kobo e-reader, you can side load a book into your Kobo reader even if you didn't buy it from Kobo. And same thing with Kindles and Nooks and all the rest of that sort of stuff. So that was what BookFunnel was built upon. In the beginning, you could not read anything in our platform. You had to get a file and you had to go put it somewhere else if you wanted to read it. But we figured out that wasn't going to work for audiobooks. There is no side loading. You don't just like grab a pile of MP3s and shove them into the Audible app. That's not a thing. So we figured out really early on that if audiobooks was going to be a thing that we actually wanted to do, and our authors were asking us for it. They were saying, hey, when is BookFunnel going to do audiobooks? We figured out that we were going to need our own app to do that audio playback. And, fortunately or unfortunately, I think fortunately, like Julie and I are really, really picky about how things work. It's about user experience and the user interface. All of these things are really important to us. So it took us a while. It took over a year and a half to really build the app. And then like along the way, we were like, oh, we'll do audiobooks. You know what? We probably should build our own ebook reader too, because we're an ebook company. So that seems like a missed opportunity. So we built our own ebook reader. So in the last 4 years, when we first put it out there, it was really more of a like, we have this app. It's really cool. It's actually the fastest way to sideload a book to Kindle or to any other device. If I opened up my BookFunnel app right now, typed in a book code, and then just said send to Kindle, boom, it'll be done in seconds. No emailing files, none of this crap. Like it's actually really, really convenient. And a lot of people use it for that. But more and more over time, more and more readers have just said, well, I'm already here in the BookFunnel app, I'll just read it, or I'll just play, as audiobooks have really taken off. And, I think there was kind of a convergence of perfect storms where COVID hit, which is not a great thing at all for anyone. But COVID hit, and a lot of authors' sales started to go up. More and more people were stuck at home. They were listening to more audio. What's funny is ebook sales went up, audiobook sales went down, because people listen to audiobooks in their cars on their commute, and suddenly nobody's commuting anymore. But as the audiobook sales started going up again, more and more authors started to take notice of how much of their revenue Audible was taking from their audiobook sales, which, if you're unfamiliar with that, let's just say that Audible takes the lion's share. And so at the same time, direct sales, as we were coming out of COVID, direct sales really started to become the zeitgeist in conversations among authors. I think because I don't have data to back it up, but my anecdata is everybody was just so scared about what happened with COVID, and suddenly this realization that your business could just go poof in an instant and you're gone. And so more and more authors, indie authors typically being the crowd that focuses on being indie and self-sufficient, were like, well, how do I ensure that doesn't happen? How can I build a business that I am in control of? Well, that's direct sales. So when you add in direct sales and audiobooks together, those two things really started to take off together, because more and more authors were starting to sell direct. And the first thing they wanted to sell direct was their audiobooks. Because, I can sell an audiobook on my store for $10, and I will take home $9.40 on a $10 audiobook. If Audible sells that same book for $10, I'm going to get like, a dollar and change, maybe $2. And so suddenly, like, that proposition doesn't sound nearly as attractive. So as authors started getting into direct sales, and as they started selling more audiobooks, way more readers started installing the BookFunnel app because that's how you get your audiobooks. That's how, unlike ebooks where you can sideload it into other stuff, if you're getting audiobooks from a BookFunnel author, you're probably going to install the BookFunnel app. You can actually download MP3s. It's an option that you can set on your BookFunnel dashboard, and some authors do it. Most readers have no interest in that, right? I just want to play an app. I just want to listen to it in my car on my way to work. And we built our experience to be a premium audiobook listening experience. So our numbers in the last 2 years have gone way up. Whereas before, the app was just sort of like, yeah, you can install it. It's a nice reader. You can do it. I read books in it every single night. But as audiobooks and direct sales took off, so did our app downloads. So we have millions of readers that have the BookFunnel app installed. And what's great about that is, and I'll repeat that we're not in the business of building BookFunnel's brand. We're in the business of building authors' brands. So we have these cute little icons, these cute little images that say like delivered by BookFunnel and things like that. And we encourage authors to put those on their store. What that does is it tells readers who are familiar with our platform, which at this point, there are millions of readers who have been through BookFunnel and trust us and put trust in our system. So when you are selling on your store, you're driving the traffic, you're building your brand, you're doing the sales. We're just stepping in to handle the delivery of the thing. But what readers have is when they see that delivered by BookFunnel, or if you even just mention that my ebooks and audiobooks are delivered with BookFunnel, I've used that platform before. I know exactly how that works. And I can buy directly from the author with the confidence of knowing that I'll be able to get that book to my Kindle, or I will be able to listen to that audiobook in an app that's really easy to use because I've bought books from other authors. And so you get this network effect of every other author who is selling direct and connected to BookFunnel. When they land on your store, that's just one less piece of friction that they have to deal with. Oh, well, if I buy from this author, they use BookFunnel. Okay, great. I know how to use BookFunnel. Everything will just go through.
It's a really important point because it's something that I think as the larger community is trying to figure out how to disintermediate some of these other platforms, thinking from the customer perspective, right? And that's kind of what we're talking about here is for them, like one of their big objections from leaving Audible is, well, I like all my books in one place.
Yep.
Okay. Well, what if that one place tends to be BookFunnel now? And it's doesn't matter where you buy it and who your favorite authors are, you can have their experience their way. But when it comes to the actual reading experience, yet we've addressed that main friction point of like I don't want to have an app for every one of my authors, right? That just, I can't, there are too many apps on my phone already, right? It overloads you cognitively.
Right.
So I think that's something we all authors should really be leaning into, is this idea of helping the larger community understand how we're kind of orbiting around this one platform for direct material.
Well, and you can do things that are never going to be possible on other platforms, not because those platforms are villainous or anything like that. They're not in that business of letting you do that. I'll give you a great example. We have authors that have started to pre-sell and sell their audiobooks directly from their website, even if they're exclusive to Audible, right? So there's like a lot of people just don't want to give up that Audible exclusivity because you do get that higher royalty rate when you sell on that platform. But they've started pre-selling on their own websites before the book gets published on Audible. So readers come in and they're like, well, I'd like to buy direct from you because I want to support you, the author. And I want to get the book early. So I don't want to be missing out, that FOMO, that fear of missing out. Like, I don't want to miss out on the new release, but I like having all of my books in one place. And we hear that a lot, right? I totally get that. I also tend to be pretty pedantic about how my stuff works. But what some of our authors are doing is like, great, listen, no problem. If you buy directly from my store, if you buy one of my audiobooks from my store, send me a screenshot of your Audible page with my books on it. I'll just go add them all to your BookFunnel library. And you can do that right from your dashboard. You can just go and say, this person, deliver all of these books, and boom, they'll just show up in their library. So now, especially if that's what you're going to do in the future, if your future plans are, all of my books are going to be pre-sold before they go live on Audible, Or I'm going to launch all of my audiobooks with Kickstarter before they go on Audible or these other platforms. When those readers come back to you and say, well, I'd love to back your Kickstarter and get the book early, but I like having all my books in one place. Great, no problem. Send me a picture, send me a screenshot. I'll be happy to just add all of those books right to your BookFunnel library so that all of your books can live in one place.
We did that with Jonathan Brzez's Sentenced to War when Variant rolled it out on their audiobook store. And what was interesting about that, and to give credit where credit's due, where I first heard about that was Will Dagas. And when we did that, the really interesting thing that came out of it is we had several listeners reach out and say, well, can I get the rest of the books now?
Yep.
And so we switched, there's a lot of talk in direct selling about bundling and how you can use bundling to find new customers, but you can also use bundling to identify your best customers.
Right.
Right. And say, okay, book 1 is out. It's $14.99 on audio. I'll sell you 10 of them for $100. If you buy it now, you're going to get the whole series. And that's something we do now on that site is we have a significant population of really heavy audio users. That's how they buy. And they get it earlier than the early people. They're the first ones that get it. And we just trigger it right inside BookFunnel.
Yep. Yeah. Bundling is one of those things that we added really early on because we saw how authors were what they were trying to do with their sales. And the thing is that, BookFunnel doesn't really care what you want to deliver when you sell an item. So if you're over on your store, we have authors that say, oh, well, if you buy any swag from my store, I have coffee mugs and I have tote bags. If you buy any of that stuff, you get a free short story. Well, BookFunnel doesn't care that you sold the tote bag. Like we'll just deliver you tell us what you want us to deliver when this item is sold. And that can be anything. Buy anything from my store and you get book 1 of my series for free. Like it's just an automatic thing. We have authors that have long running series now that have a reading list. So if you buy, it's a 20 book series, I've got a bunch of, novellas and short stories and all of these sort of things. And readers are like, no. I want to know exactly what order I need to read all of these things in. And so they would put together just like a little PDF that was a reading list. Well, then they attach that PDF to every single book. So if you come through my store and you buy any of this series, you also get the little PDF reading list added to your BookFunnel library so that you can open it up and go, oh, okay, the next book in the series that I want to read is that short story. I'll go and pick that up at the store. And of course, if you're going to put out a PDF, make all those linkable. So when they click the link, it goes out to your store and they can go buy that for 99 cents or whatever. Right. And so like the bundling thing was something that we built in really early on when we added bundles. So the point of it is like the other cool thing was before that, and this is one of those where like, again, none of the stores let you do this, right? If you go on Amazon and you want to sell a 10 book box set, you basically have to create a gigantic file in Vellum or Atticus that is like all 10 of your books mashed together into this one giant file. Except that what we have heard from readers is they hate that. They like the price. I want the deal, but I hate having this gigantic book all in one. I know I personally hate it because it's probably just the author in me, but as I'm reading, I read fantasy, right? Epic fantasy. So big battles with dragons and wizards and all that sort of stuff. And I will be reading the book and we come into this big epic battle and I'll glance down at the corner and be like, oh, we're only at the 58% mark. So this can't be the final battle of the book because we're not at the 75, 80%. Like I know like how the story structure is supposed to go. But if I'm in a huge box set, I can't tell. I have no idea where I'm at in the book. The other problem that we found with readers was they go to your store and you've offered this 12 book bundle. And what used to happen is you would give them this one gigantic EPUB that had all 12 books in it, except that they would immediately go to their BookFunnel app or their BookFunnel library and go, where are my other 11 books? I was told I was buying 12. And they're like, well, yeah, you did. You bought all 12. They're all in that book. Nope, there's only one book in my library. I'm supposed to get 12. And you're like, I understand, but they're all in there. If you click table of contents, you can see all the books. The disadvantage, of course, is like reader confusion, but also you have 12 beautiful book covers that you paid for, but now all they get is this sort of like angled three-dimensional box set-y sort of book cover.
Yeah.
So we built bundling directly into BookFunnel so that you can go in and create a product and say, I want book 1 through 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12. Two things that are great about that. One, you didn't have to go to Vellum or Atticus and build this gigantic book. You already had, if you're selling all 12 individual books, you can just create a thing that now sells all 12 of them. Heck, you can put them together in box sets of 3. You can put 6, 1 through 6 and 7 through 12.
Yeah.
You can split them up any way you want. And then when they get delivered, when the reader buys that 12 book set, BookFunnel gets the notice and says, hey, they bought this product, and BookFunnel says, oh, I'm delivering 12 books for that product. They go to their library, boom, all 12 books are already there. They're sitting in their library waiting for them. And that reduces that reader confusion. It lets them see what they actually paid for, right? It sees the value of what I paid $10 and bam, I got 12 books that showed up rather than one tiny little icon that says, oh, this is 12 books. You just paid a lot of money for these 12 books, but it's just this tiny little thing that sits in your library. 12 things in your library looks like a whole lot.
Yeah, it feels like more value.
Right.
So let's you're kind of talking about customer experience. You've for better or worse, you have a lot of customer facing.
Yeah.
Talking specifically about readers now.
Yeah.
Not authors, but readers. What can you help authors understand, whether it's just generally speaking or across genre, about the BookFunnel readers? Because you have this almost 10 years of experience and millions of people and hundreds of millions of downloads.
Yep.
And not so much like, oh, they're, they don't know how to load stuff, but more about like what you can help authors think about how they could better serve those people and understand what their needs are.
Sure. Number one that pops to mind is let us do what you're paying us to do. We get authors that, and I admit, like, I get it. Authors are trying to be helpful. So sometimes we do everything in our power to make sure that the readers know to contact us if they're having a problem, whatever that problem is. Most of it is, the book's not showing up on my Kindle or whatever it is, but it can be anything. Sometimes your EPUB file is corrupted, which we do a lot of work on the back end to check and make sure that it's going to work. We check it with Kindle. Every book that gets uploaded to BookFunnel, we check to make sure that it's going to send to Kindle and it's going to be successful. Like, we do all of this sort of stuff, but there can be anything. We've had authors that have uploaded audiobooks that accidentally flipped a couple of the chapters. So then the reader emails us and says, chapter 13 and 14 are reversed. Well, we can just go fix that. Like, our admins will just go fix that for you. We had a great one where the author had uploaded, the narrator had given them all the files. Here's all the files, 28 chapters, each MP3, whatever. And then, like, somewhere around chapter 23, a reader emailed us and said, I'm hearing this like weird clicking sound on chapter 23, and it wasn't in any of the chapters. And so we go and we check, okay, is it something that is it something about our app? It's not, or is it something in the original file? And yeah, somehow when the narrator had given the audiobook to the author, that one chapter had like their unedited, unpolished version. And so the narrators, like, we're listening to it, the narrator's literally clicking a pen, click, 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 like while they're recording. And I'm guessing that their software, whatever their finishing software, polishes all of that out.
Yeah.
In the end, but that one chapter was messed up. So we get reports like that sometimes, but generally what we see is people that are just, they're not sure how to get this book to their Kindle or their Kobo or whatever it is. So the first thing I would say is, let us do what we do. Our reader support team is amazing. They are trained on every device that a reader can possibly have in their hands. So while you're trying to be helpful, when the reader emails you and says, how do I get these books to my Kindle? and then authors are trying to help them. They're like, oh, what kind of Kindle do you have? It like, please don't do that. Just like, that's actually what you're paying us for. And we're really, really good at what we do. Like, we do this all day long, every single day, 365 days a year. If you've emailed back and forth with them 2 or 3 times before you finally say, I don't really know what's going on, I'm going to send you over to BookFunnel, they're already frustrated at that point. We're 3 emails deep and they still don't have their book that they paid for or that they got for free or however it works. And this is even more important as you move in, as we have moved more in the direction of direct sales, because while you might give somebody a free short story and they're a little annoyed that it hasn't showed up on their Kindle yet, when I just bought a book and I'm ready to read it right now, I need it to show up on my device because I'm ready to read it. And so when it's not working, I'm going to get really frustrated. I bought this book because I was ready to start reading it. So, if somebody has trouble, and if you look in our help documents and our videos, we encourage authors in every way to tell readers to contact us if they're having any kind of problems with their books so that we can take over that. Some of the best tips that I have. So now, as more and more authors have done direct sales or setting up their stores or doing all this stuff, we've learned a lot about readers and how they think. And, anytime we have a plurality of readers or a bunch of readers that come to us and seem to be having this same problem, we'll actually, our author admin team will go and look at your store and say, okay, this author, man, we're getting a lot of refund requests from readers for this particular author. What is happening here? And all the refund requests are like, I thought I was buying paperbacks. This is ridiculous. I don't want ebooks, and give me a refund. Well, we send them back to the author and say, we try to help them and say, oh, well, ebooks are great. Have you ever tried them? But if they don't want them, they're great. We just send them back to the author for a refund. But when we start seeing more and more of those, we'll load up the author's store and we'll go, okay, how are we getting so many refund requests? And sometimes you look and you go, oh, they're really not making it clear that these are ebooks. This is a digital product. These are not paperbacks. I'm not sure how the reader thought they were buying 12 paperbacks for $4.99 and $0 in shipping, but whatever it was, that's what they thought that they were getting. And so then we will reach out to those authors proactively and say, hey, we have a few suggestions for how you might be able to change your page to reduce the number of these people that are getting confused. And then the other one that I saw recently, so Katie Cross, I'm sure you know who she is, but she's Katie, out there. Yeah. She does a ton in direct selling and she drives all traffic to her store. She's all about the direct selling, right? And she's phenomenal. She's also a wonderful human being. But one of the things that she did that I absolutely loved, because we do, like, the number one sales support email we get is, I thought these were paperbacks. I want a refund, right? Across the board, we see those. We see several of those every single day across a whole bunch of authors, right? Sometimes it can be really like one author we're getting a lot of problems for, but it's across the board. What Katie did was, so if you go in a store like Shopify, you could Shopify and Thrivecart and all these other guys, right? They all have this concept of what's called a variant. So you create one product. Let's say you're going to sell your book, and whatever your book is, and then you create variants. So it's like, okay, well, the ebook is the primary thing, but there's also an audiobook variant and a paperback variant and maybe a signed paperback. So now there's 4 variants. Somebody lands on your page and it says, hey, here's my book. You can click here and buy it, add it to your cart, do whatever, right? Most of those will pre-select whatever the default product is. So if that's your ebook, then that's your ebook. And that's the first thing they do. People miss that. They miss that they wanted a paperback. All they saw was $4.99 and they thought $4.99 for a book, that's a great deal. So they clicked buy and didn't realize that the default setting was the ebook, the first thing that they had checked. We have a saying in software, the devil is in the defaults. And so a lot of people will just ignore all the rest of that stuff because they're just trying to click through and finish whatever it is that they're trying to do so they can move on with their day. So what Katie did was, rather than having every book be variants of paperback and ebook and audiobook, she actually split her entire store. So before you get into her store, there's a toggle at the top that says ebooks, audiobooks, paperbacks. And if you click paperbacks, the only products you're going to see listed on that page are all paperbacks.
Yeah.
And when you click paperback, there might be a link there that says, if you prefer ebooks, you can find those over here, but it's not a drop down. It's not any kind of thing you have to select. If you add this to your cart, you're getting a paperback. And if you've selected paperbacks, every book title you click on is only a paperback. And if you click audiobooks, they're only audio. The other thing that I love that she did was visual clues, right? Telling people exactly what they're looking at. If you look at all that, you can go to katiecrossbooks.com if you want to go see what I'm talking about. Every ebook that she sells is the same book cover for her book, but it's set inside of an image of an iPad. Every audiobook that she sells is the cover as a square, but that apparently the square was not enough to let people know that this is an audiobook. So now it's a square and a big giant pair of illustrated headphones over the top of the square image. And then finally, if it's a paperback, it's the book cover with a little floop that looks like pages so that it looks like a three-dimensional product. When you look at her pages, it is extremely clear what each of these things is. And if you click on a paperback, then all of the upsells in that are all going to be paperback upsells. So if you click on book one and she's offering the first 5 books as a bundle as a great upsell, it's only going to be the paperback bundle because that's what you clicked on first. And I thought that was brilliant. And I will say we get no emails for Katie Cross customers saying, I thought these were paperbacks, I want a refund.
Yeah. No, that's really good. Is there anything you've noticed, like genre differences across the audiences, across your customer base?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so there are some audiences that skew older. Romance, you get older readers sometimes. Mysteries, cozy mysteries. Those are the readers that we're going to hear from the most. Older readers, not because they are incapable, they just think they're incapable. My mother's a classic example of this. My mother would tell you I'm no good at technology. I don't know how to work any of this stuff. And she absolutely does. My mother's a brilliant woman. She can figure this stuff out. She just thinks that she's going to screw it up. And so she doesn't want to do anything that it might screw the whole thing up. And so she just throws her hands up and goes, oh, I don't know how to do this. And so, by and large, the kind of people that come to BookFunnel for support are going to be older readers. And you're going to find most of those in genres like romance and mystery and cozy mysteries and things like that. Science fiction and fantasy, although we do have a lot of women readers. For anybody who doesn't know, women are the largest block of readers in the world. Even in science fiction and fantasy, but the readers, whatever gender readers in science fiction and fantasy tend to be techier kind of people, or at the very least not afraid of it. So like we have authors that write sci-fi and fantasy, we'll never hear from their readers. Like unless there's an actual problem, like the chapter got flipped in the audiobook or there's a pin clicking or something like that. They sell hundreds, thousands of books a month, and we just never see one of their readers come through our platform.
Yeah. Well, I know that the one that we get on science fiction is, and you guys have come to us, is like, hey, you've got the DRM lock on.
Yep. Yeah, that's a perfect.
There's just a group of people that want to, I don't know, listen to it on what they built from Radio Shack. And
that's a great example. So it's what you're talking about is when you add an audiobook to BookFunnel, one of the options that you can enable is to allow readers to download DRM-free MP3s. So just meaning like unencumbered MP3s, they can listen to them on literally anything. Your toaster can probably play MP3s these days. And so and this is the thing, this comes up sometimes. By default, BookFunnel does not enable that option because a lot of authors are scared that if they give away the just plain MP3s, that everybody's going to go pirate their books. And so that is not an option that we enable by default, but you can turn that on. I will tell you that if you write in romance, no one cares. The readers that are reading romance, they want to be able to listen to it. They want a great app experience. They want to listen to the audiobook in an app that works like they expect it to be, and they have no desire to download your MP3s. They just don't care about that. If you're writing in science fiction and fantasy, or especially in like lit RPG, yes, they definitely want to download your MP3s because they want to know that. What's funny is that we looked at our data, and most of the people that download the MP3s still listen to the audiobook in the BookFunnel app. They
Oh,
just
that's
want
hilarious.
they just want to know that they have a copy should BookFunnel decide to take it away from them or something like that, which is not something we would ever do. But
Yeah, but
they want to know that they bought it and it's mine and I want to keep it.
yeah, no, that's interesting. That's really interesting that you brought that up, because I do think it's something we talked about in the podcast a couple episodes ago about people with all the subscriptions and all the services that we pay for. People want to own stuff.
Yep.
Right. And the fact that, yeah, like maybe they never listened to it, they never can find those files again on their computer. Maybe they're annoyed because every time they open up their, Apple Music, it starts to play. I don't know, but like the fact that they have that means that they own part of your brand. That's a connection that you want your customers to have, where they care enough about your brand that they want to own a piece of it, like, and physically or digitally have it.
Yeah, my kids love to use Amazon Music. I tend to use Apple Music because so back in the day when Amazon Music first launched, their whole deal was they kind of copied the iTunes model where you could just buy any song for 99 cents and it would be in your library. And if you open up Amazon Music, there's your library. You could do everything you want. But then, of course, Spotify came along and they decided, oh, we'd much rather have $10 a month for the rest of your life to let you listen to all this music. And so you load up your Amazon Music app and you're like, oh, cool. Well, for $10, I can just listen to everything and I can listen to it on my Echoes and my kids can listen to it anywhere they want. And that's great, except that Amazon stopped selling the music. I think you can still get to it if you dig deep, but really kind of like Kindle Unlimited. If you go to an Amazon page now, being able to actually buy the ebook is this tiny little link that's just hidden down, but it says read for free because that's what they're pitching. That's what's best for Amazon. But what frustrates me about that is I spent all this time in the beginning before I switched over to Apple Music. I spent all this time creating these great playlists on Amazon Music of all the music that I loved and whatever mood that I'm in and all this sort of stuff. And yet, if I go into Amazon, if I go click on any of those playlists today, half of the songs are grayed out. They are no longer available because whatever, Amazon had a licensing dispute with Warner Brothers Music or Bertelsmann or whoever they decided to fight with today. And that means that the music that I thought I was going to be able to listen to, because I'm paying my $10 a month, not available to me anymore. Those songs are now out. And I'm literally looking at my playlist and the songs are just grayed out. And that's really frustrating. Whereas before, and on Apple Music, if I'm worried about that happening, I just go pay 99 cents for the song. I'll just buy it. And now it's in my library and they're not going to take it away from me. It's the streaming services. And so you're right. We've kind of gotten into this economy now where nothing you buy, you actually own. You're just sort of licensing a temporary copy of it. But readers want to know that they're going to be able to keep that book forever, especially if you're doing direct sales, because that's a feature, right? That
it's an important feature.
We tell authors you should 100%, especially if you're in sci-fi, fantasy, lit RPG, mysteries, thrillers, like you should absolutely advertise the fact that when you buy this audiobook, I'm going to give you the DRM free MP3s that you can keep forever, because that will never, ever come out of the Amazons and the Kobos and the Barnes and Nobles of the world. That is a feature that you can offer directly from your store that they cannot get as a buyer from any of the other buyer experiences.
Well, Damon, we should probably wrap this up. It's been awesome having you share a little bit about your community and the latest stuff that's been going on and where you're going with stuff. We're also super excited to have you as a sponsor at Author Nation, and we were talking before we got on the call about some of the extended sessions that you're going to be working on to help people really understand some of the new cool stuff that you've got in the product.
Yeah, we're really excited about it.
Yeah. So, let people know a little bit about, where they can find you and all that cool stuff we typically do at the end of a podcast. And
yep,
I'll probably see you NINC next.
Yep.
All right. And then, of course, in November at Author Nation.
Yeah, bookfunnel.com is where you can find everything. You can find a list of our features, pricing, everything you want. If you have questions, you can email support@bookfunnel.com. That's our author support team. Happy to answer any questions. And of course, we're going to have a big presence at Author Nation this year. So if you want to come and meet us, our team is amazing. They're wonderful people. And even if you just have some questions or you want to come check out our sessions, we're going to have several of the sessions, like you were saying, where I am going to personally lead several sessions talking about sort of beginner book funnel features and advanced book funnel features, direct selling, the kind of cool things that you can do, and how to kind of nuts and bolts get a lot of this stuff set up. So if you really want to come out, then yeah, come out to Author Nation and meet us there.
And you're saying the whole team's going to be there. So that's
Yep.
First time. This will be awesome.
Yeah, in the past, I've been to every 20 books before it became Author Nation. And for most of that, it was just me. And then my wife, Julie, who runs the company with us, she started coming because it was our table was overloaded. I couldn't answer all the people and all the questions. Last year, we bought 3 people. It was Julie and myself, and then Jack is our author support lead. And even with 3 people, we were buried. We couldn't keep up with the demand. So this year, yeah, we're bringing our entire author team. Everybody's going to be there to answer questions and hopefully do office hours and let people come in. And when you have a specific question, we can just sit down, pop open your laptop, and show you exactly how to do it.
Yeah, I think that's going to be one of the big things that has changed for the better, is given folks more time to get that one-on-one time with you or your team to kind of dig into some things and get comfortable with that. Because, your product, and, there's several other products in this industry that, they're kind of the necessary part of your tech stack for doing things. And if from my perspective, and the theme of what we're talking about today is if we're trying to figure out a way to take that kind of nebulous, decentralized audience and start to make them your audience that you can connect with whenever you want to, it's a go-to tool for me, at least.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of those things where as we have grown and as more authors have used BookFunnel, then it has grown in the consciousness of readers. Like, we have so many readers now that have come through our platform. And it's one of those things where once they go through it one time and we help them get their book, and sometimes we might need to help them, and sometimes most of the time they figure it out on their own. Sometimes they need a little help, but once they've done it once, it's really turnkey for them to just grab another book and do it in. So if you're selling direct, if Katie Cross is selling a book or Emily Kimmelman is selling book 1 or book 1 through 3, once they get through that process one time, now the fear of going to the author store and just buying the rest of the series, there's no friction. I already know that I like the series. I know how to get the books. Boom. I can just go buy them and they show up.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right, Damon, good talking to you, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.